So beginning with bioluminescence, if we were to collect fish down to a depth of about 300 meters, we would find that 45% approximately of all the fish that we collected were bioluminescent. But if we went down to much greater depths, depths of 1,000 meters or more, where there's essentially no light, we'd find that fully 75% of all fish that exist at those depths have some form of bioluminescence. And the kinds of bioluminescence that we see are of several types. So one thing that is sometimes seen, and there are fish that are called anomalops, which you can actually see at the Shed Aquarium, and there's another closely related species that's called photoblepharon. Now the anomalops are referred to as split-fin lanternfish, and the photoblepharon is called the single-fin lanternfish, but they are closely related. Both of these fish have organs, light organs, right under their eyes, fairly large white organs, and they actually have a kind of a section of flesh that almost looks like an eyelid that they can stretch over these organs. So these things are filled with bioluminescent bacteria, and they're glowing all the time. But the fish is able to actually control the glow because it can pull this membrane, this opaque membrane, over the organ. So normally these fish would be flashing maybe a few times a minute, and if they get really excited, they can flash much more rapidly. And they can use the flashing to signal one another. As I say, anomalops is something that you would see at the Shed Aquarium. We had 2 photoblepharons in our tank in my office up to about maybe 6 months ago. The last photoblepharon died. But when I first got these fish, they were very, very interesting because they had very, very bright lights. And when the fish actually, if I turned the lights off in the office in the morning, when I would go to feed the fish, as the fish came towards me, it actually looked like the headlights of cars, little miniature cars coming at you. Very beautiful, sort of a bluish-green light that was shining out of the, and they would flash. As I said, they would flash this on and off. So it's a very pretty thing to see. But unfortunately, after a short period of time, maybe about 6 weeks, the bacteria, whatever the conditions that were necessary to keep the bacteria healthy had changed in the tank. And although the fish continued to survive, the bacteria did not, and the glow started to diminish. And over a period of maybe by 2 months, basically you couldn't see any glow at all. So that was unfortunate. How fish produce light, though, if they're not if they don't actually have this kind of an organ where the organ itself is filled with bioluminescent bacteria, there are fish, of course, that are actually able to produce their own light, just like we've seen in other bioluminescent organisms. That is, that the fish will have a photophore, which may be a very, very simple structure. It could just be a few cells that are actually producing the specific luciferin and luciferase, and that's what's glowing. Or in some cases, the fish might actually have a fairly complex structure. So in addition to having these cells that are producing the light, behind the cells, behind the light gland, so to speak, there could be a reflective layer, which is sometimes black in color, or it might be silver in color, and it actually reflects any light that is directed back towards the fish. It reflects it back out into the environment again. Some fish also have what actually functions as a color filter. So as the light is coming out in front, now this time in front of the light gland, is actually a structure that will filter out undesirable wavelengths of light. And then finally, some fish even take this one step further, and they have a modified, sometimes it's actually a scale that's modified with a curvature to it, and it's transparent, and it actually functions as a lens, and this collimates or focuses this little beam of light. So you have fish that will have sometimes hundreds or thousands of these tiny little lights all over the side of their bodies, and sometimes it'll be on the ventral surface of the body, and we can tell pretty much from where the lights are what their function is. So, excuse me, if the fish has these ventral lights, that's usually being used for identification of its own species. So it's producing this light pattern so it can find other fish of its own kind for mating purposes, or if it's schooling, for instance, if it's trying to just congregate with other fish of its type. The ventral lights will come in very handy. If the lights, I'm sorry, these are not ventral lights, lateral lights, that is the lights on the side of the body. But if the lights are ventral, that is if they're actually on the bottom of the body, then that's usually being used as a form of counter illumination.